What's up, beautiful people? The question I have for today is, have you ever heard the statement, marriage is hard? Like really, really hard. However, in this video, in this podcast episode, we will be debunking that statement, right? And giving you the truth of what it's really like to be in marriage and how to have it in a good way, a productive way, and a fun way. And so, my name is Ricky Jones Jr. We also have the oh so lovely
Crystal Jones
back again for another podcast episode of Marriage Matters, in which I'm excited to get into it. Right? I mean, it's going to be so good. Make sure y'all stick to the end, because even as well, we share why marriage matters to us at the end. And so, I have some notes today because I prepared. Okay.
Yes. I have notes too. And we shared notes with each other.
That is
so
true.
We have the notes.
Yeah. Usually I don't do those. I don't work off notes, but I think this topic is such a pivotal topic to talk about. And I want to make sure everything that has been downloaded within me comes out through this episode. And so how you want to attack it? Do you want to go like point for point, or just want to let me ask you this. Even before we get into what we have to say, where does the topic itself come from? Because I know it was a thing that you even talked about in last episode, right? Last week's episode, and you hear it, right?
Yes, it's so annoying. I think that, so there are things that I really feel like God pokes. And so when people say marriage is hard, it pokes me. Like a holy poke from God. That's just it's just such a cringe. And so it bothers me so badly.
Poke and a cringe.
I'm so serious. Because in my mind, I'm just thinking, if I wanted stress, if I wanted hard, I could have stayed single for that. That's the truth. And if you are living marriage in a way that is the way that God ordained it to be, it should not be hard.
Yeah.
God, in the word, it says his yoke is easy and the burden is light. And, God doesn't call us to live a hard life. So it just doesn't make sense that we want God to give us ease and success and, thrive in all these areas of our life. But then when it comes to marriage, we put in this other bucket but that's hard. Well, no, then something about God's hand is not on it in the way that it should be.
Wow.
And so I just feel like as Christians, it's time that we stop making a statement that marriage is hard and we actually choose to live in a reality of what God wants for Christian marriage. Now, if you're not saved and you whatever, then you saying your marriage is hard, it probably is, because whatever God's hand not on is going to be hard, stress, struggle, and all of that. But if you are a believer, you have access to what God has ordained.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be hard.
There it is. And I think oftentimes a lot of people say they go into marriage with the thought that my first year is going to be the hardest year. Largely because that's what people say. Yeah. However, we are debunking the thought and the fact that believers should not have that as the confession that they say, right? It should not be what is vocalized. It should not be what is taught. It should not be what is passed down. And so we're going to debunk that thought and annihilate it, so that going forward, people are saying that marriage isn't hard. Right? I'll give you the right words to say, so don't you worry. And speaking of, the first thought that I have is the very fact of the matter is life and death is in the power of the tongue, right? I love that scripture text. I believe it's in Deuteronomy. However, it just speaks of the power of the words that we say. Yeah. Right? If you say a thing, you can expect to see that thing. So if you go in saying that marriage is hard, or you go in saying, I know the first year of marriage is going to be hard, because it was hard for X person, it was hard for Y person, it was hard for Z person, then it's going to be hard for me. Wait a minute. All of those three different units are different people. First off, let's just start there. Everybody is different.
Right.
Everybody's different.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, we both been in various relationships prior to our relationship, and we can both attest to the fact that each person that we were in a relationship with were all different, right? They all had different likes of food, and the list goes on, right? And so is it for a family unit, right? And so everybody's different, so we can't take on another person's burden because of what they say happened for them.
And I think Yes, that's so true. And I love that you bring that up because, again, people mindlessly take on the thought that others have of this is going to be hard, not considering their life is totally different than your life. And you're saying it's going to be hard, not even a lot of times knowing the specific struggles that they have, the baggage that they've brought into that relationship or whatever the case may be. And so I just love that you brought that up, just knowing like you claiming identities of situations that are totally different in your situation because y'all not even the same people.
Y'all not the same people, and it wasn't even in the notes. But at the same time, I'm just thinking of people that hear stories from people that may have had a child outside of the marriage and then they get married and boom, that's a scenario.
Yeah.
That may not be your scenario, right? But at the end of the day, the point that I want to make is life and death is in the power of the tongue. So go into your marriage saying the things that you want to see. Go into your relationship, establishing things that you desire to see in your present and your future based off of the things that you say. And so based off of what you say, you can expect to have. And so that's my first point, you know.
Off with that. I love that first point so hard. And I think that even when I talk to people, I literally, one of the first things I say to singles is your marriage doesn't have to be hard. Like I try to just ingrain it and say it over and over. I tell me and Ricky don't have a hard marriage. And like you said, life and death is in the power of the tongue. And I also know one of the reasons we don't have a hard marriage is because for the past time that we've been married, all these years now, we consistently say we don't have a hard marriage. And so not only did we go in with a mindset of marriage does not have to be hard, as we've continued to be married year after year, weekly, I'm sure I probably talk to somebody and say, marriage isn't hard. Me and Ricky don't have a hard marriage. We're continuing to sow that seed. And so even if now you're listening to this and you're married and you feel like, oh, nah, we're on the struggle bus, start changing your confession today.
Yeah.
And start saying, no, we have a very easy marriage. It's not hard. We access all of the great things that God ordained for marriage.
Yeah. No, I love all of that.
Yes.
No, do you think?
So, okay. I guess we can kind of just hop in back and anyways. So there are a couple things that I know I wrote down that I was like, there are some practical things you can do to help make sure your marriage isn't hard. And one of the very first things that I wrote down is just keep the promise you made to each other on your wedding day. Literally, like when you think about what a good friend is, even thinking outside the context of marriage, just thinking about people that you're friends with. How do those people act? They keep their word. They're not liars. I'm sure your best friend is not a liar. And sometimes people run into challenges in their marriage simply because y'all got married and then you done skipped out on half the stuff you said you were going to do. I'm going to love you well. I'm going to serve you well. I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to, let you be my confidant. Like all these things, if you literally, some of you are so stressed. Yeah. But if you literally just go back to the things you actually said when you made that promise to that person on your wedding day and just do those things. Because a lot of it is about expectations, which is a whole nother podcast, but a lot of it leans towards that. But you know what your spouse is expecting from you? What you said.
Right.
You said.
And it's funny, like I was scratching my head and all of that because I know we wrote our vows, right?
Yeah.
Even when I saw that as your first point, I was like, oh, snap. Like, I don't even know what my vows are. But I'm sure I could find them. You know what I'm saying? Because they was in my phone first before I wrote them down on the paper. Yeah. But I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back.
And one of the things that I was thinking, too, because, a lot of people, you could have been married 5, 10, 15, however many years, and you might be thinking, I don't remember exactly what I said. I have an idea, but I don't remember exactly what I said. But one of the greatest things, even if you don't know exactly what you said, the Bible paints such an amazing picture of what love looks like.
That is so very true.
Was it Corinthians? 1 Corinthians 13. There's such a beautiful picture of what love looks like. So even if you can't remember what it is that you said, a greater reminder that you can live out, go to the word and see what it promises about what love should look like. So do that.
Yeah.
Literally, just do that. And even if you need to sit down with your spouse and say, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's hit some reset buttons. I listen to this podcast and let's make commitments to each other about what that's going to look like, because your spouse is just holding you to that standard.
Yeah, and shouts out to your pops, because he, I would say, summarized that passage in 1 Corinthians to say that love seeks to give the advantage and not take the advantage.
Yes.
And if you operate with that mindset and mentality throughout your marriage, it'll help in so many different ways, right? Like, once I got a grasp of that concept and that line and that quote, it made it easy, right? It made it effortless in the fact of marriage and in the fact of loving and honoring you. And so shouts out to him for that. Because at the end of the day, it'll break down all the different things that love is and the way we should act and respond to others in love. However, it could be overwhelming, but the simple fact of the matter is love seeks to give the advantage and not take the advantage. And going to my second point, right, is that your marriage will be as great as you want it to be at the rate you're willing to communicate. So oftentimes people say or live out the false fact that marriage is hard because they simply aren't willing to communicate. I believe the greatest component of our marriage, in that we're able to say it's not hard, is because we communicate. If we're frustrated about something, we'll communicate. If we desire something as opposed to the outcome that took place, we'll communicate that. If something rubbed us the wrong way, we'll communicate that. You know, and even in our communications, we'll communicate an ideal way to communicate, which is just communicate.
Communicate about communicating.
Exactly. Like, all boils down to communication.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes people are frustrated and mad because of the things that they don't say. But if you want your marriage not to be hard, which it doesn't have to be, right? First, we already know we're going to change what we say. We already know we're going to operate through love. But then as well, we're going to communicate, right? And so talk. You can't talk enough. You're with this person the majority of your life. So why not talk to the person? Don't bottle up those frictions and things that are irritating you. Speak it out to the person that has the ability to make the change.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think sometimes people have a challenge when it comes to communication because they have a challenge with vulnerability. And the truth is, even though they've dated this person for X amount of time, or, you know, maybe been married to this person for X amount of time, they have not actually been vulnerable with this person. And it takes a level of vulnerability to communicate certain things. I know not too many weeks ago, we were just having a conversation about something, and I was like, I have this idea. I feel like you shut it down, you know, whatever. And so that was a moment where we were communicating that. But in that, I had to even say, you know, I've had this thought, but I realized that could literally just be me and insecurities I have that's having me to think that you're thinking this way. But please correct me if I'm wrong. But it takes vulnerability to admit to someone, I might be a little insecure in this space. And so sometimes people have a hard time communicating, where, hey, the breakdown in communication could literally be things that I'm making up in my head because of insecurities that I have. And less to do with anything that you're saying right now, but because they're not willing to be vulnerable and they more so want to keep up that sense of I'm good, like whatever, that's when the communication becomes aggressive. And it starts to feel like, you know, they start attacking, then you're attacking them and they're attacking you. And it's really just two people that are unwilling to be vulnerable and say, you know, my feelings are kind of hurt. I feel bruised right now. But vulnerability makes way for good communication. And I think if more people, which it seems insane, but if more people were willing to be vulnerable with the person they married, it wouldn't be that hard.
It wouldn't be that hard. And, you know, you made a valid point. However, even as you said it, I'm just thinking to myself, if you could be totally bare physically with this individual, like, how much more vulnerability are you withholding? Right? Because, like, stand in front of your partner, turn around bare, like, that's a point of vulnerability that a lot of people don't get to experience. And so, I mean, I'm not telling you to do this, but I'm just thinking, like, if this is being done, like, why can't the other
and I think I can
levels
actually
of vulnerability
kind of
exposed?
I think I can kind of speak to why not.
Talk to me.
And I think it's because, you know, hopefully your kids aren't listening right now. But
You know, I
I'm
try
gonna
to be
keep it in the pocket.
That's it.
But I would say in the culture that we're in today, where sleeping around is a thing,
Okay.
it's actually easy for people to be completely bare in front of somebody else and not be vulnerable, truly vulnerable with them at all.
Gotcha.
I know, you know, in the past when I was, you know, doing whatever I was doing, there were people there's no sheer, not even an ounce of vulnerability that I would give to them. There were people I dated, they didn't even know what I did for a living. Like, because I wasn't vulnerable with them at all.
Gotcha.
And I think people have built up these walls, and unfortunately, they take those walls into their marriage. And I think those are some of that we don't talk about a lot, some of the remnants of bad things that come from, you know, God says don't be intimate before marriage.
Don't fornicate.
And so you're building up these walls, and people don't even realize the walls that they've built. And then they get into a marriage and they have these issues again with vulnerability, communication, all of this. And that's because they were out here doing all these things and building up these walls and all of that. And then it's like, now you can't talk to your spouse because you're used to being closed off to keep yourself from being hurt in certain situations. So I think that's how.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
It's a thing.
Yeah. And so I have a thing.
Let's hear it.
I want to be vulnerable with the people while talking to you.
Okay.
All right. So Crystal has a phrase that she uses when she could tell, like, I'm uneasy or I'm not happy lucky. And so she already knows where we're going, right?
Yeah.
Like Kevin Hart did his special. He had his phrase, pineapples. But Crystal have her phrase, right? Her phrase is, you good? And I like...
He hates it.
I really do. I really do. But yet she's still consistent with
I
it.
gotta
So
find a different
even if
one.
even if I'm frustrated at the time, right? Because there are times where I am frustrated. There's times where we're both frustrated. Something that happened, or more than anything, I could have wanted a thing or something to turn out the way I wanted to turn out, and it didn't. And I am the way I am, right? So I'm frustrated. And so rather than saying or asking the question, right? She'll just ask the question, you good? But like in passing, like not even like eye contact, but she knows I'm big on when you're talking to somebody, make eye contact with them, pause and wait for the answer, right? Because she'll walk about, you good? And so, all I'm saying is, in the realm of communication, I found the time to say, let's find another way to communicate how another person is doing, right?
We can definitely do that. And I think even then, as you were talking through it, I think me saying you good is not even me. It's less of me asking for a response and more of me letting you know I know something is off.
Okay.
And I don't want to come at you like, you upset, you mad, you this. So I'm like, you good? You good? Like, it's more of an acknowledgement.
That's the poke.
It's more of an acknowledgement that even if you think it's extremely subtle, I noticed a change in your demeanor.
Okay.
And this is me saying, I know something's going on. But also acknowledging that you're obviously not ready to talk about it yet. Because you will come and you'll talk to me if it's something, because again, we don't listen. If he left a bowl in the sink, I'm not having a whole argument about a bowl in the sink. That's stupid. Like, so it's me acknowledging that something's going on and either you're not ready to talk about it yet, or in 5 minutes you may decide, this thing is not even a big deal. Like, but it's just me acknowledging, hey, something's askew here, and I'm here if you want to talk. If you're ready to talk, I'm ready. If you're not ready to talk, I can give you space. But I can think of another word. Pineapples.
I don't even know if it'd be better, right? you know, because I'm trying to figure out what does she want to do with this information. She only uses it when she knows I'm not good. So you already know the answer to the question.
I'm just
so
like, oh, I know.
There's that. But then if you want to get to a solution, hey, what's troubling you or what's making you feel that way? Because, you know, I'm solution minded. So, you know, but anyway, we'll figure it out. That's just what it looks like when you communicate. Because there's some things that your spouse will say and or do that rubs you the wrong way. And rather than being more frustrated because they did it, talk to them about it. Let them know and come to a realization that maybe we do need to come up with another way to go about that moment. But it's fun. But it's the beat of communication.
And I mean, we'll see how far this episode gets, if we'll end up with a part 2. But I think this is also a good place to insert. There are times when Ricky may ask something or say something, and I'll literally say, I don't have a response yet. Or I may say, like, I need time. And that's because I know me. I will go from 0 to 1 billion in like 5 seconds. I built so many things in my mind that are like so irrational. And I've gotten to a point of maturity where I can recognize when it's enemy trying to, insert himself in something that's like, oh, we disagreed on something or whatever. I've gotten to a point of maturity where I can notice, like, these aren't my thoughts. The enemy is trying to plant seeds here that are not real. And so instead of spewing out ridiculousness, I will literally just be like, I need a minute. Like, I don't have a response yet. And that gives me time to, just calm down. And I think especially as women, give yourself a second to calm down. Like, don't allow a disagreement about you cooked dinner, but he already ate to turn into you don't even love or respect me. What? If he didn't love or respect you, he wouldn't have married you. That is the enemy planting thoughts into your head. And you have to know when to keep your mouth shut so that you do not carry on with what the enemy is trying to tell you and make things bad for no reason. Just take a minute. It's okay to take a minute. I think sometimes when people talk about communication, they have this idea that's like, you got to talk it out till 5 a.m. Like, sometimes the best thing for you to do is close your mouth. Like, sometimes the very best thing for you to do is close your mouth. And I know there's like should you go to bed angry and all these types of things.
We'll unpack that scripture one day.
Yeah, we'll have to come back to it to unpack it at another time. But sometimes the very best thing you can do is close your mouth. So sometimes good communication is also knowing when to stop talking and not not ignoring people. That's disrespectful. Nobody's talking about walking around ignoring your spouse. I would say maybe just get to a place where it's like, okay, we can talk about other things or continue on and whatever, circle back to this. But sometimes the best thing you can do is be quiet.
Wow. There it is. There it is.
So I wanted to say that.
Yeah. That was good.
And then the next thing that I know I had on my list concerning ways to keep your marriage from being hard is see your marriage as a new birth. Don't drag things from when you dated into the marriage. Saying I do is a new beginning. Saying you are forgiving and letting all that go and have a fresh start in the way God sees you in this new relationship, the two becoming one. So sometimes people have marriages that are hard, especially I would say in the beginning, because you're reflecting on things that happened. Oh, well, when we were dating, you did this and this and this and this and this. Listen, I don't care if he bought you flowers every week while y'all were dating.
Right.
When y'all get married, this a new start.
New start.
So don't be mad that he ain't buying you flowers every week. I don't care if there was, some issue that was going on when y'all were dating. You saying I do is a new start. And it's you saying, listen, whatever happened, if it was good or bad or whatever, especially if it was something bad, I'm letting it go. Today is a new start, and we are starting new the way that God is seeing us as starting new, because he's seeing two people become one.
Yeah.
That is the birth of a new creation now in a marriage in Christ. And so you're new. You're new.
Yeah.
And so you can't keep reflecting on all these old things, dragging this baggage into your brand new marriage, and then expect success. Start new.
Start new. Start new. That's beautiful. I mean, it is what it is, right? Because when you come together, you're a 1-year-old, you're new. And so even as, you know, I shout people out on their anniversaries and things like that, people make 18 years. I'm like, look at y'all an adult now, right? Like, treat it like that. Treat your marriage years or times that you've been married simply as you would like a child. Like, you go through things, you overcome things, you learn how to walk, you learn how to talk, right? And you learn how to develop different nuances and things to keep the union together, to keep it from being hard as others say that it could be or should be, or that it would be. Like, no. I recognize that what we're doing is a new thing. We're stepping into totally new territory, right? Because even if you were to be dating prior to getting married, and maybe you live together, right? It's a whole different dynamic, dating as opposed to being married. Like, it is what it is. And so at the end of the day, to your point, I love that very, very much so, because it's the truth. It's a new thing.
Yeah.
And you should respect it that way.
Yeah. And I was going to say, even too, realizing as well, when you say I do, you're saying I do to everything that person is. Like, that's what you're saying I do to. If there's fixing that you feel needs to take place and all of these things, don't get married yet. Because when you say I do, you're saying I do to if this person never changes another thing about them.
Yeah.
First of all, don't be trying to change people. You know, God does that. But even outside of even just looking at it that way, like, I think sometimes people think, oh, we're married, I'm going to get them to do this now and get them to do that.
Oh, yeah, no.
No, when you said I
Scratch
do,
that.
you said I do to everything they are today.
Yeah.
And if you cannot say I do to everything they are today, don't say I do. And if you already did say I do, that's what you accepted, baby. You laid your bed and you lied in it. Like that, you're here now.
Yeah.
You're here now.
Yep.
So don't be thinking that now you can change any of these things, because it is what it is today. So you said yes. You said I do. This is your new life.
Hello. Speaking of new life, I'm going to go to my new point.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes.
Point is hard, right? Because oftentimes we use words and we don't know the definition of them. However, I was like, let me look up what the word hard means. And as I read this, I just want you to think on the fact of, if this is what you want the words to be that are said over your marriage or about your marriage. Okay. So hard, difficult to deal with, manage, control, overcome, or understand. With this definition, who will want to be married or deal with it when this arises? And so, difficult to deal with, difficult to manage, difficult to control, difficult to overcome, or difficult to understand. And I think it's so beautiful in the way in which we're flowing and going, because even as you talked about controlling or trying to change somebody, right? Because oftentimes it could be or seem to be hard because somebody's trying to control or change somebody that's not changing the way in which they want them to change or to go. And so it may be hard that way. But no, at the end of the day, recognize that you married who you married. And in time, they could learn to grow or they could stay, right? But at the same time, if you have a good godly marriage, I'm gonna say it that way, and you're connected to God and relationship with God, and you're connected to a church, and the list goes on, then that person will evolve and change over time to be more like Christ. Like, that's the goal at the end of the day. And so there will be a change, right? And we can always be prayerful. We can always give things to God, cast our cares upon him because he cares for us. There are all those things that we can do. However, what we should not do is look at the person as the reason for hardness, or I want this person to change, or I want this, I want that, and they not hearing me, they don't understand. Like, no. Who you married is the person that you're with, and in time and in due time, in the fullness, let's bring that back, in the fullness of time, they will be who God has purpose and ordained for them to be even before the foundations of this world. And I can say that's been the case for Crystal and I, right? I didn't go into this marriage with the idea that she was going to change and I was going to mold her into the perfect wife that I had in my mind and in my visions. Like, no, it wasn't so. What I simply did is I married who I married, right? I married who God told me I was going to marry, and I'm thankful to God that this is who it is, right? Beautiful, beautiful specimen of heaven. But in it all, there were some things that if I could change, I would erase a characteristic and write in another one. But that's not my job. That's not my responsibility. That's not who I'm not her creator, right? What I did was I prayed. I prayed and I talked to God. God, as we grow closer to you, may our union, may our relationships, may our characteristics, may our interactions be more Christ-like, God-centered, and heavenly impactful. And we have grown. Like, there's been some things that she's come and we've come to each other both on and said, hey, I thought this before, but this is what I think right now. Or, hey, could you work with me on this? Because this is where I am right now. And it's like, cool, let's do it. But it wasn't because of me or her beating each other up.
Yeah.
Right? Saying change this, change that, do this, do that, and making things hard for our marriage. So oftentimes people say that marriage is hard because that person is making the marriage hard.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know even just as you were talking, like, I know I thought about at an early time in our marriage where I was just like frustrated by, it was the smallest thing. It was literally like the fact that you don't like trying new foods. And one of the things in my mind, like, I was just like, how are we supposed to travel the world together and stuff? You don't want to try new foods as we're literally living in South Africa. You know.
And just think, which is a funny, right? That's just a reminder of how like crazy frustrations could be. The enemy could put on you. Here's the thing: as you were saying that, I thought about you're saying all of that, but then you know somebody who traveled the world, but was just as much, if not more, of a finicky eater than myself. Can you think of the person?
No.
Alex McCrae.
Oh.
Such a finicky eater, traveling around the world. All he would eat is chicken fingers and fries. But yet, here you are, frustrated at me.
So, yeah, like, that was, like, one of the things, and there were just little things that I'm like, why, this is going on. But one of the things, and I love how you talked about, just you praying and talking to God about different things. What the prayer that God had me to pray, he was just like, Crystal, pray that you see why the differences that you have. What is the value in the characteristics that Ricky has that I'm intentionally bringing into your life to make you a better version of yourself. Like, and it was like, man, when I stopped looking at just different things, that the way you would do different things, or different characteristics that you have as a point of frustration, like, whoa, why you don't do it like me? Why is it not? When I stopped looking at it that way and started looking at it like, man, God really made my husband with intentionality. He knew the person that I would marry, and he knew that Ricky would have these characteristics that are different than mine. Give me the grace to see, and not only see, but honor the way that you created him in a way that brings value.
Wow.
Not just to his life and him being that way, but value to my life. And that he can bring these characters now to me. And a really surface level example, I'm not good at math. Like, I'm just not good at math. And so when there's numbers involved, I literally don't even think about it anymore. I just look at Ricky and I'm like, hey, numbers, math. Like, but not just thinking about math, thinking about a characteristic that you don't have as much, maybe patience, cleanliness, like, whatever the thing is. Instead of being upset with your spouse about the fact that they always want everything clean, they always want a strict schedule, instead of being upset with that, when it comes to, you got to figure something out, you know what? I don't have to be stressed about this. Hey, Mr. Organization, please help me with my lack of organization. Like, when you start to honor it and see it as a value, there is a grace that's able to come over your marriage because you're honoring who God created your spouse to be instead of seeing it as a point of frustration.
Yeah. No, I love that. Well said. Greatly added upon. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And even as you shared that, it just made me think about the very truth of the matter that in marriage, we are two people, but yet are one at the same time. And so though we are building a marriage and a life together as one, we also are two individuals that are growing and learning new things and experiencing new things and seeing new things, whether it's through our spouse's eyes or even through our ability to see ourselves through the things that they do. And so I love that. I love that. And you're right. I mean, you grow and learn together. You get to try different things and you get to experience life differently, right? From another person's point of view, which in your case is me and my case is you. And so, I mean, it's fun. It's fun. And I say it's fun, right? Because some people will say it's frustrating. And it could be frustrating if you're trying to bend the person to be who you are, right? And have them to be to your bent. But I think you explained that beautifully.
Yeah. And that's really important. Yeah. That's so important. You married the person you married.
Yeah.
You guys, you married the person you married.
Yeah.
If you're single still, you're marrying the person you married. The way my dad said it, he said, when you got married, you made the best intelligent decision you had at the time. This is the option you had.
Which can mean so many things.
This is the most intelligent decision. This was your intelligent decision. The person you decided to marry. If you had other options, if you know, whatever, who knows what could have happened. You made the most intelligent decision for you at the time.
You go to Vegas to get married and you go to, I think you have to like go get your marriage license or whatever. And you see those
intelligent decisions.
It make you scratch your head.
But
how expensive is intelligence? You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, they was getting married.
Well, and one thing I know that my dad was saying is because sometimes people will get in marriage and they get years in or whatever, some people months in, and they're like, oh man, like, why did I marry this person? Da 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 da. Or they start thinking about all these other options that they could have had. Oh, what if I married this person? Or if I married somebody that was, you know, richer, or somebody that was kinder, or somebody that was better help with the kids, or whatever, name the thing. No. If you could have, you would have. You made the most intelligent decision from the options you were given at the time. This is your decision.
That's your decision.
And so I get it.
Yeah.
Like, some people, for them, marriage is hard because they keep thinking about other options.
They say that marriage is hard.
They say their marriage is hard, or they're truly making it hard for themselves because they're thinking of other options. They're thinking, if I divorce you, I will be better off. They're thinking, if I married this other person, I would be better off. No, baby. You made the intelligent decision from the option you had at the time. Live in it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to look at your spouse through that lens of grace and love, things are just going to get better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the next thing that on my list of how to keep your marriage from being hard, marriage requires effort. Like, marriage requires effort, but it's not hard. And so that's just a perspective shift.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I say is, if you have a plate of food, maybe your favorite meal, whatever that is, you have to use a fork to pick up the food and put it in your mouth. That requires effort. It's not hard, but it requires effort. Marriage does require effort. Communicating with vulnerability requires effort.
Yeah.
Being intentional about seeing the value and the differences between you and your spouse requires effort.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not hard. No one would ever sit down to eat a meal and say, oh, it's so laborsome. This is so hard. This is difficult eating. It's not difficult.
Yeah.
But
They're like 5.
Yeah, I know. Like our son. Oh my God, just stress. Listen, whole character. That one. But
usually you would not.
You really wouldn't, as an adult, you wouldn't sit down to eat and say, this is so hard. Eating food, drinking liquid, like, you wouldn't. And so I think even there needs to be a perspective shift when it comes to what is just effort and what is hard. Like, marriage does require effort.
True.
But it doesn't mean it's hard.
Mm-mm.
And so you really need to think about, what are you calling hard? And, you know, do you just need to shift your mindset perspective? Oh, it's so hard. I had to make dinner. Well, baby, you had to cook anyway. making enough for one extra person, it's pasta. Throw in 5 more noodles. Like, it's not hard. It's the same effort that you would have had to take in to do this for yourself anyway. Like, oh, you got to put an extra fork in the dishwasher. Like, it's not hard. Is it really hard? And I think even sometimes people, they're just labeling things as hard because they are frustrated, not because it's actually hard.
So there's a difference between effort and frustration.
And hard.
There's
a difference.
And make sure you know the difference.
Know the difference.
I dig that.
The difference will set you free.
The difference will set you free. Take the effort to recognize the difference.
Take the effort.
Come on. And I mean, I love that because it truly does require effort. And that was something that I'm so blessed to be able to have parents that are still married and obviously living with them and things. I was able just to see what marriage looks like and how marriage is conducted. And there were conversations that they would have amongst me. And then there were conversations they would say, hey, this is grown folks business. We're not going to have around you. But what it did say to me is that there are some times where it's okay to talk around other people. And there are some things that you have to talk about behind closed doors. And it just is what it is, right? There are some things that we talk about. Either we'll talk about it in front of you all on the podcast or around our friends. But then there's some things we just talk about amongst one another. These are the things that I felt certain ways. We're being vulnerable. I think that's another word we introduced in this podcast episode. We're being vulnerable with each other. And through our vulnerability, we're looking to get insights on one another. But then as well, make sure our union that we forged years ago remains strong and intact. And then it's well grows. So I love that. And even as a word shift, what were you about to say? Go ahead.
Well, and I was just going to, because you kind of tapped on it, I was going to just...
As long as I ain't poke it.
Throw in a little piece there.
Salt Bay.
Sometimes, you know, when you talk about certain conversations that you have in front of other people or certain conversations that are just between the two of us, I think people run into a lot of struggles because of who they running and talking to. When I talk to younger ladies, especially who have recently gotten married and maybe their friends also recently got married, the first thing I tell them when they're having challenges, don't go talk to your friends. Don't go talk to your friends. And it's not even just because they just got married. I do not, if there's something going on with me and Ricky, I really don't go talk to my friends about it. Most of them been married the same amount of time that I have. Like, if there's a challenge, if anything, I'll go talk to my mom. She was married 30 years before my dad passed away. There is wisdom there that she can point to. And also, I know my mom is not finna sit there and even just listen to, I don't know, not that I would do this, but even if I was to attempt to, she would not let me sit there and just throw all this trash on Ricky's name. Like, she would not let me do it. She would be like, girl, stop. First of all, stop. Let's just go ahead and pray. I can pray in tongues over whatever this is before I let you throw trash on Ricky's name. And that is the type of person that you would even want to have any type of conversation with. Not somebody that's letting you just dump all this trash about your spouse on them, but somebody that's going to be like, listen, give me as minimal details possible so that we can get to the solution and that God has for this. And so, you know, when it comes to talking, like I said, you were talking about talking to people, like, don't be just.
What I heard was, don't just talk to people to talk about a problem.
Don't.
Talk to people to get wisdom for a solution and another way to see the problem. Because your mom would say that a problem is only the problem the way you see the problem.
Yes.
Right? And so get wisdom.
Yes. And 100% of the time.
Asking the mess.
100% of the time, I can tell you, when I've gotten to talk to my mom about, hey, I think, you know, I don't know what's going on. My mom never talks to me. A response has never been something that Ricky should do. It is always something that I should do to be able to better serve the marriage, to better navigate the moment. She never says, well, Ricky should do this or should do that. It is literally always, okay, Crystal, you should pray and see what God's saying about this. You should serve him well in this area. Like, if you're talking to people and they always got a solution that you need to go tell your spouse to do, don't talk to them no more. The solution should be, for how God is going to better position your heart to navigate what's going on. So
I love that.
That's not the subject for this podcast, but when you touched on it, I had to.
Gems was dropped at the end of the day. And so I love the way you say that marriage isn't hard. It just requires effort, right? And so if I was to give a word for it, right, I would say rather than calling or seeing marriage as hard, recognize that marriage is enjoyable, recognizing that it starts with the choice. And so marriage is enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's your choice whether or not you choose to enjoy it or you choose not to enjoy the moment that you may find yourself in.
Yeah.
However, every step, every day, every second of your marriage is another opportunity to enjoy your spouse, to enjoy yourself, and to enjoy the union that you all have come together to say, I do, in front of others with, right? And so enjoy it. Marriage isn't hard. It's enjoyable. Marriage isn't hard. It's enjoyable. So find ways to enjoy it. Find different things that you can do. We've shared so many different nuggets or insights on how, right? Love seeks to give the advantage and not take the advantage. That's another way for you to enjoy your marriage rather than thinking about how hard it is. Find a way to give your spouse the advantage of a thing, right? Whether it's a drink or taking them out to eat or, letting them eat the last scoop of ice cream that's in the refrigerator, or that's in the freezer, right? Like let it be what it is, right? And don't. It's not hard. It requires effort, but at the end of the day, it's enjoyable. However, it's your choice, so make sure you choose wisely.
Yeah, and I would also say with that, just like some practical tools, because sometimes people can be married for a very long time or, be years in. And it's just like, I hear you saying enjoy it, but I can't look around and see nothing to enjoy about what's happening here. And I would say just something practical that you can really do to start to journey back towards that enjoyable marriage. What are things that you guys did when you first started dating? What were some of it could be the silliest things that y'all did when you first met, but it made the two of you laugh. It made the two of you have fun. Really think, make a list together.
Yeah.
What were some things that we did together that were fun? And it's even, I've seen this where people, you started out broke and you get a little coin and then it's like, y'all not having fun. Well, what were some of the broke dates that y'all went on that you had fun? It's funny. It made me think about when we went and rode that double bike and you hated it because you were in the front and I was in the back and I wasn't pedaling.
Right, I was doing all work.
When he looked, I would pretend I was pedaling. But
that was one of the moments it was like, hey, Ricky, you good?
But it's think about those. But we would go out to the park and stuff, really practical ways of getting back to the enjoyment of marriage is really think about what were some of the fun things that you guys used to do before it became unenjoyable for whatever reason. And, especially when kids and everything get into the mix, so much focus can be diverted. And I would even say before it gets to a point of it's unenjoyable, make sure you're being intentional about taking time to do things that the two of you truly enjoy doing together.
Right. Were you finished with your thought?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I totally agree. And I say that because I'm even thinking about our beginning, right? And what it was like in the beginning, which we were on the struggle bus at the end of the day financially.
Financially.
We were on the struggle bus. But one of the things that we love to do, we just had to do it, is find a way to eat a meal, right?
Yeah.
At a price that we can afford. So we would find ourselves at the Publix, and if it was BOGO, in Georgia, you can do rather than doing the buy one get one free, you can get one for half off.
Yeah.
And so we was always looking in the paper what's on BOGO this week, because we was gonna get one of them things and get that thing for half off.
Yeah.
So we was having fun doing that, finding different cheap meals at restaurants.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that, to your point of how sometimes you can get more wealthy in your marriage, and then you lose that. Right? But at the end of the day, go back to it. See what you can do with $20. See what you can do with $10. We were trying to make $10 stretch for a dinner.
Them $10 date nights were everything. We talking about after tax and tip.
Correct. And that's what it was, because that's what it was. But at the end of the day, your marriage can be, and it should be, enjoyable to the point of getting back to the things that made you smile, getting back to the things that made you see the twinkle in your spouse's eye, getting back to the times in which you valued one another's opinion. Because oftentimes we can get to a point of a marriage and we stop listening to the opinions of our spouse. However, there were times when you need it, right? You were truly longing for what they had to say and the thoughts that they had and the opinions that they had as well. And so get back to the things.
Yeah.
Get back to the things that made the marriage matter. And so, yeah, those were my points.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I did mine as well. I feel like I chimed in on yours as well.
Yeah. No, you did good. And so as we like to do at the end of the videos is share a reason, right? Our reason why we believe marriage matters. And as it pertains to this topic, I would say that why does marriage matter to me? Because it's my safe space to learn how to communicate what's going on within me. And so marriage is that spot where you get to learn how to be vulnerable and you get to learn the extent of your vulnerability. Like, don't allow for a friend or, you know, somebody else outside of your marriage to be the place where you're most vulnerable, or you share the most of your information and gather the most of your what to do's and things like that. But allow for your marriage to be that space where you learn how to talk about how you feel, what you're thinking, what rubbed you wrong, and the things that you desire out of what's next. And I can say that marriage matters to me because I get to do this with somebody that I've never had the opportunity to do this with. So that's why it matters to me.
Yes, and you hit a trigger word for me, safe space. There's going to be a whole episode dedicated to that for sure. I'm so intentional about that. But yeah, I would say for me, marriage matters as it pertains to, you know, the subject of marriage doesn't have to be hard, because I think so many people go in with a delusion. It's really a delusion. It is a seed of Satan that marriage has to be hard.
Facts.
And I think because so many people go with that thought, it actually robs people of the amazing experience, the enjoyable experience that marriage can be. And I don't want people to continue to be robbed of all that God has for them in the experience of marriage, because they are accepting, literally, like I said, a seed of Satan that has just been planted down and, like you said earlier, passed down from generation to generation. And it's sad, and I don't think it has to be that way. And so I know for me, it matters that people know you being married literally should be the beginning of you living your very best life.
Hello.
Like, your best days are truly always ahead of you once you get married. I want people to know that. It's not the end of fun. It's the beginning of the most fun you'll ever have.
Hello. Greater fun. I was about to say greatest fun, but yeah, I mean, all the words: better, greater, best, great, triumphant, fun, right? At the end of the day. And I love that. And if I was to say like anything, just to sum up all of my thoughts, I would say that oftentimes people say that marriage is hard because they accept others people's realities or other people's shortcomings as, or when I say other people, I'm talking about other people's marriages, outcomes and things like that as what will be theirs. And you don't have to, you shouldn't, because we're all uniquely different. And so we will all have uniquely different outcomes, experiences, and interactions. So don't allow for what you see happen to others be a forecast for what will happen or take place for you. Know that marriage is good, marriage is great, marriage is fun, and you will have that, right, if you just give it a little bit of effort and enjoy each and every moment that you have with your spouse and with yourself as you live each and every day. So thank you, my dear, for this episode. I appreciate you.
I thought you were going to remind them, start changing their confession today.
There you go. She just did.
Circling it back to, like you said in the very beginning, your words are seeds. Yeah. Start changing your confession today. I don't care what it looks like in your home right now. I don't care, you know, if you're engaged, whatever, like, start making the confession over your future marriage if you're single. But I don't care what it looks like in your home right now. Like, change your confession starting today.
There it is. And so if you're watching on YouTube, please click that subscribe button as we are climbing and growing and going. and share it with somebody. Share it with your other married friends that are learning and growing as it pertains to marriage. And, you know, as they pop different questions in the comment section, we'll get to them, we'll speak to them, and maybe we'll do a video for them. But at the end of the day, we just want you to know that marriage matters, and make sure you tune in next week so you can hear another topic around why it does. Till next time, peace.